For those looking to escape the hassle of city living, moving to the countryside does not necessarily mean you have to forget about the finer things in life. In fact, you might discover that you've got more time in the day to enjoy your home and those you share it with.
South African homes have truly come into their own over the last few decades. Generic imitations have made way for modern masterpieces and character-filled spaces. Finest Homes explores these creations, talking to the visionaries who are bringing them to life. Join us as we explore some of these spaces, showcasing the architecture, interior design, and the landscape design.
I'm your host, Balisa Dembe, and this is Finest Homes. In today's episode of Finest Homes, I visit the picturesque village of Greyton in the Overberg. Known for its majestic oak trees, mountain views, and considered architectural aesthetic, it's a true gem for those looking to escape the city. Our feature house is a renovated build that has strong ties to the barn-style architecture of yesteryear, but has been modernized by Cape Town-based designer Hendre Bloem. I met up with Hendre to explore this modern classic.
Hi, Balisa.
Hi, Hendre.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you
Good,
for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here.
Now, what a picturesque view to arrive to when coming home.
I know, it's like unobstructed views over the Sonderend Mountains. In winter, we get beautiful snow at the top of them. And this beautiful park you see is supported by the local community. It's a park my mom actually started. And everybody from the neighborhood and up the street kind of forks in and puts this whole park together.
How incredibly thoughtful. But for someone like myself, who is my first time visiting Greyton, I couldn't help but notice that strong presence of traditional architecture.
That's right. It's got quite a Cape vernacular sort of architectural style that the village really tries to upkeep and kind of keep that significance of what it used to be like, and also taking it and making it a bit more modern for obviously new homes being built in the village.
And stepping onto this incredible property, what was here before and what was the client's brief?
So the house structurally was pretty much here as it is. And the brief was to completely renovate the internal part of the house, adding on additional bedrooms, additional living spaces, and really just modernizing the house. Even though it wasn't a very old house to start with, it was all about taking the existing house and just elevating it, that it's something that's relevant for the next 20 years and something that really modernizes the living experience within the space.
Now, Hendre, as a creative, once you've completely understood the client's needs, how did you see that design playing out?
I think it was all about obviously getting my stamp on the architecture and the interior design, but also what I really wanted to achieve is creating something unexpected for Greyton, where it wasn't a typical Greyton cottage, but as you stepped into the house, it was a whole different, more modern and vibrant experience.
Let's go in. I feel like I'm walking into a whole new world. What a lovely surprise. Hendre, can you just talk me through the layout of the space?
Of course. So as you walk in, you're greeted by this double volume living space that consists of a lounge and a more family style dining area, open plan kitchen, and all of that leads onto a secondary kind of TV lounge area with another dining space that's a bit more for entertainment. There's 2 bedrooms on the lower level, each with its own bathroom. And then upstairs, we've got the main ensuite bathroom and main suite, and then also a study area.
Now, was this always a double volume home? And what are some of those changes that you made?
Yes, so it's always been a double volume home, but changes we made, for instance, are outside on the stoop area. Well, what used to be the stoop is now the family lounge and entertainment area. And then also the upstairs loft areas were quite unutilized spaces that we actually created into 2 of the probably most used spaces within the house, being the main bedroom and a study space.
As much as this is an open plan space, there seems to be very distinct areas of use within the house.
That's right. And the whole concept in design was to almost create kind of 2 seasonal spaces, one being your winter space and one being more of a summer use space. And it all comes through the clustering, like you said, of different areas within the interior. Of course, we've got this double-sided fireplace that you can't ignore that serves both the formal lounge and the family-style dining area. And I think that also kind of gives gravitas and grandeur to the whole experience as you walk into the house. Other things that's also quite noticeable, I think, is a subtle contrast in terms of color usage. So you've got very kind of natural and muted tones, but then almost offset against like darker charcoal colors and black and more deeper and richer colors that all kind of leans towards a more sophisticated design aesthetic.
I must say, I do love a good kitchen, and this ticks all of the boxes. What was your design approach when it came to the kitchen?
A vital element was, because it's an open plan space, that it really just eases and flows from basically the kitchen space into the other areas. So something I really wanted to achieve was a feeling and an effect of when you're standing here and cooking, you're actually still part of the whole conversation, part of the party, and you don't feel like you're just somewhere in the kitchen doing your own thing. So the kitchen consists of two sort of main areas, the island being the one, and obviously the back units. So the back units in a beautiful kind of scratched oak board finish. So it really gives you a natural look, but also kind of seen in a new and almost unexpected way. The island itself is quite in contrast with the rest of the home, being quite a dark element. We've got a beautiful leathered granite top throughout, so it gives it that sort of matte finish. And that again contrasts the high gloss cabinetry that you see at the bottom. And it's all sort of topped off with this brushed brass ledge that serves as kind of a breakfast counter nook area.
I love how the oak finishes act as a hero piece against the dark walls.
Yes, that was really one of the design aspirations of the house, that we create subtle contrasts that's quite bold in certain cases, but then also quite subtle and almost like blended away in other areas.
I have noticed two distinct dining areas. How have you been able to optimize the dining experience?
So the two areas consist of the one area over here that has a round dining table. And the whole idea with that is that it's really a space where people can interact. You've got a clear view of everybody around the table, and it's such an awesome space to sit and play games or have a meal. And then the other space is probably a bit more of a formal kind of entertainment space where it's a longer table and can cater for a few more people. So obviously for bigger parties, it works really well. But it's also a space that's quite fun with the bench on the one side. So it's formal yet informal at the same time.
I love how the sash windows marry the old school to the new school.
Yes, so from the outside, there's certain elements of the house that's kind of kept in a more traditional way, like the windows. There's a few outside details like the gates and cladding that really gives it that kind of heritage feel, but then almost merged with a modern approach on the inside where things are used in a contemporary way and quite unexpected.
Stay with us as after the break, we continue the home tour by taking a closer look at what used to be the patio. In today's episode of Finest Homes, I'm visiting the quaint village of Greyton in the scenic Overberg, with its tree-lined streets and mountain views offering the perfect setting for a country retreat. Our feature house is one that speaks to the traditional Cape vernacular architecture while enjoying all the comforts of a modern home. Before the break, I met up with Hendre Bloem, who was responsible for the architecture and interior design updates to the house. We touched on the barn-like exterior that speaks to the village guidelines with pitched roof and sash windows. Step inside and you're welcomed by a modern home that speaks to all the comforts a city slicker like myself can enjoy.
Now we step into what used to be the old patio.
This is definitely something I've been looking forward to, the old patio that you've now transformed into additional living space.
Correct. It's really something that from the get-go, we knew we wanted to change this space. When it was still an open patio, it was a very unused space because this is the western side, so you get this really harsh afternoon sun. And the whole idea was to break it open and create like one continuous space towards the rest of the interior, but then also vitally important, like the link towards the garden. So having big sliding doors that can obviously open up, and it really just creates that indoor-outdoor living experience where it feels like you're sitting in the garden even though you're inside the house.
For someone like myself who is a girl from the city, I know with the countryside, the nature and outdoors is extremely important.
That's right, especially here in Greyton. Plants and fauna and flora play such a vital role in the community and the environment as well. So the idea is also that the nature reserve and the environment around us actually spills over into your private property, where it becomes like an indigenous garden within your own private setting.
How have you been able to make the outdoor and the indoor spill into each other?
I think it's architecturally a combination of a few things. So in this space, for instance, it's the use of the large oversized sliding glass doors. So in winter, you really get to sit inside the home and really enjoy the view to the outside without getting the cold coming through. But then there's also like other elements like the skylight in the main bedroom that has beautiful views over the river and the mountain in the area. So it's all about kind of like focused and created views where it looks into a specific space or into a specific view.
This formal dining room space seems like an entertainer's dream with the long table.
Yes, and it was really one of the things I wanted to achieve, is to have a space that can be used for that, where it's entertaining for larger groups of people, but still have the space quite versatile and beautiful with the use of the different wooden tones and colors within the space.
It is tucked away quite comfortably towards this corner of the home, and the use of color within the space is truly spectacular with that art.
Yes, art plays a vital role within the house. This specific piece is by an artist called Hendre Bloem, and it's all about bringing in color into this space. Quite bold, but yet fits with all the other finishes and colors you see within the house.
Definitely bringing the space to life. But moving into the bedrooms, each bedroom seems to have its own distinct style.
That's right. And I think the layout of the house leans towards that as well, where two of the bedrooms on the ground floor are more kind of garden bedrooms, and the upstairs main bedroom is where you experience the views and the mountains in the surrounding area. And each one, like you said, has its own kind of style and quirky elements that fits the personalities of the clients and those who would obviously use the space.
As an occasional visitor myself, having ensuite bathrooms truly does make the difference.
It definitely does. And I think it also gives someone that kind of like privacy that people might require. In this case, each bedroom has its own ensuite, and it's a combination of one having like a full bath and shower experience, where the smaller bedroom might just have a shower, but kind of done in a more luxurious open plan feel. So you feel like you're still in a very comfortable and beautiful space. The bathroom also utilizes quite interesting materials. We've got a raw sort of granite tile that's used on the floors and on the walls. So it gives quite a seamless and modern, sleek look. But then there's also quite unexpected materials like a raw steel that's used for the vanities. So it's quite new and quite unused and unseen in that specific format.
And diving deeper into the main bedroom, I believe that was completely transformed too.
Yes, the main bedroom used to be more of a storeroom and just housed a geyser, to be honest. So the whole space was quite unutilized and inaccessible because it only had a small ladder leading up to this space. So when we looked at the overall layout of the home, that was one of the first things the client said. We want the main bedroom to be in that loft space. So then it was kind of like looking at how do we convert the space to give us enough room to accommodate the bedroom, a bathroom, a dressing area, all within quite limited height and width space.
After the break, I sit down with Hendre to discuss some of the technical challenges and particular details of this finest home. In today's episode of Finest Homes, I'm visiting the historic town of Greyton in the stunning Overberg. A setting characterized by big trees and impressive mountains, the town boasts an architectural presence that adds to an elevated country feel. Before the break, I met up with all-round creative Hendre Bloem, who was tasked with the renovation of a classic barn-style home, but one that needed a modern update. From the outside, the house reads as a traditional Cape vernacular home with pitched roof, low boundary walls, and wooden sash windows. Step inside and you're met with a considered modern interior that makes the most of open-plan living. The ground floor is made up of an oak and charcoal kitchen with brass inlay in the counter. It flows onto a round dining table for informal diners or a game night. Anchoring the space is a double-sided fireplace that sits between the dining room and formal lounge. What used to be the patio is now a TV lounge and second dining room that spills onto the garden.
Hendre, as we do sit down and just take it all in, I must say you have done an incredible job with this renovation. But what were some of the challenges that you experienced?
I think with any sort of remote sort of location where you're not close to a big city or to Cape Town in this instance, there's obviously challenges with logistics and getting certain products and items to site. I think over time you do learn how to achieve the best results. But in this case, I must say I was really surprised and very happy with the end result.
The use of steel can tend to feel very industrial. However, within the space, it definitely doesn't.
Yes, I tried to use steel in quite a unique way. Through the staircases, for instance, the set on each side going to the loft spaces, and all of that was custom designed and manufactured in Cape Town, and then treated in a way that it actually doesn't look like your typical steel structure. So it's quite soft in an aesthetic approach. And then also using steel in other areas like some of the furniture and vanity details where it's used in a raw state, which is quite different, and it almost becomes an art piece where over time it oxidates and gets a character of itself.
Absolutely. And with the very prominent fireplace, what are some of your standout features in each room?
So every room to me has like quite a unique feel and a very important focal point that was achieved. In the TV lounge area that we're sitting in at the moment, I think a natural focal point would be the Nero Marquina marble on the wall. It again becomes an art piece in itself. And in this case, because the television is mounted onto that wall, it actually blends away when switched off, but then obviously also becomes a focal point in itself. The family dining space features beautiful furniture pieces by James Mudge, both dining table, bench, and chairs. And that seen against the artwork and other art pieces within the home, I think creates such a vibrant and unique, almost like a quirky element where it's quite playful in certain aspects, but then also quite sophisticated and almost grown up in other areas. When we look at the formal lounge, there, the furniture is quite muted and understated in a sense, but then accent pieces are created through some of my own custom designed furniture pieces that gives it that kind of subtle color and almost becomes that focal point that you spoke about earlier, where it's all in small details or the finish of the product more than the wow, bold statement of like a big element in those areas. In the kitchen, I think the standout feature would be the finishes used, the combination of all the various elements that ultimately brings the space to life and creates that warm and welcoming experience. You've got very understated luxury in certain areas, and then also like quite fun elements like the drinks cabinet that hangs on the wall pretty much and can actually be moved around if you ever wanted to.
When working with traditional architecture, were there any limitations that you've experienced?
There can be. I think the fortunate thing about this house is that it's not a heritage home, yet we still wanted to be respectful of the Greyton aesthetic and not put something up that's completely different and contrasting the homes that's already in the area. When it comes to the front facade of the house, for instance, we've kept that in a way that it links in with the aesthetic requirements of Greyton. So when you walk into the house, it's a completely different experience. But from the street, it's quite unassuming and quite traditional in a sense.
How far then can you push those modern elements when working within an old-style home like this?
I think that's where the design challenge comes in, where you look at details and the use of finish in new and exciting ways, where you're maybe limited in a sense of what you can change architecturally. But when it comes to the use of the material, I think that's where you can let the creative juices just flow.
And what was your favorite part of this project?
For me, one of the best aspects of this home is the lighting design at night that you experience when you're in the home. So during the day, pieces were chosen like lamps and floor lamps that actually becomes like almost like architectural, sculptural features. But at night, it all comes together for me. And that's where you experience the house almost like in its full glory, where every little detail is well illuminated and a mood is kind of created in each room that best replicates the use of that room.
And finally, Hendre, in your opinion, what makes for a finest home?
I would say attention to detail. When it comes to any home and design, I think detail is what makes or breaks a project. And especially when you're looking at finest homes, I think the quality of finish needs to portray excellence.
That's it for this week's episode of Finest Homes. Do join us again next week as we bring you more inspirational design.